morning. Welcome. I'm Dr. Malia Jones. I'm a hybrid social infectious disease epidemiologist and the editor-in-chief here at Dear Pandemic. And I'm joined today by Dr. Michelle Kinder. Dr. Kinder has a PhD in immunology from the University of Pennsylvania and is one of those nerdy girls here at Dear Pandemic with me. How are you?
I'm good, thank you very much. You know, we're coming up on 1 year of working from home. You'd think we'd have it all figured out, but there's always new challenges. So my latest struggle is teaching my son to get his own snacks.
Yeah. Well, that would be helpful, wouldn't it?
Yeah. Yep.
Yeah, it is. I know. I can't believe it's a year. This past week was the 1 year anniversary of what I think is the first time I ever heard of SARS-CoV-2, which of course was not even called that at the time. So
Mm-hmm.
it's hard to believe it's been a whole year.
Yeah.
So I want to offer a huge thank you to Bridges for the Deaf and Hard of Hearing in Tennessee. They are providing us with live closed captioning services by Lucinda Plexico and ASL interpretation by Jeannie Settlemeyer. So thanks so much to Bridges. This service is going to be available through the end of February as an experiment, and we would love to know if it's useful to you. So if you are using these services, could you please let us know in the comments? That would be really helpful.
Yeah, and we also have a newsletter. So you can sign up now for a quick digest of our most popular posts twice a week at the top of our website. And just a reminder, we don't take questions cold. So if you have a question, you can submit it in the question box on our website, www.dearpandemic.org. And while you're there, try to search for your question, because a lot of times we may have already answered the question that you've already have.
Yep, we have been doing a lot of work trying to get the information out there about these great new vaccine candidates. And since Michelle's an immunologist, we have a lot more vaccine questions to tackle today. So yeah, we got a lot of great questions. Are you ready to get started?
Absolutely.
Great. So we have a question from Dana from New York, who asks us, can you explain the difference between mRNA, adenovirus, and recombinant vaccines?
Yes, so that's a big question, actually, and you know, we'll talk about kind of what they have in common and what the differences are. So all the vaccines that are in development that are mRNA, adenovirus, and recombinant vaccines, these are all based on the spike protein of SARS-CoV-2. This is the protein that the virus uses to enter the cells. It's kind of the hand of the virus as it's opening the door to your cell. Successful successful vaccines kind of need two things for an immune response: a danger signal, like, hey, this is dangerous, and the antigen. So the antigen is what the vaccine will target. So in this case, all of these vaccines target the spike protein. The danger signal is kind of a little bit different between these vaccines. So we'll start with the mRNA vaccine. The mRNA vaccine, so the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine and the Moderna vaccine, these are messenger RNA vaccines that are a piece of genetic material, which is the messenger RNA that's encoded in kind of a lipid bubble. This messenger RNA, it goes into your cell and tells it to make this part of the spike protein, so part of the large virus. Both of those are relatively similar as in how that works, but the messenger RNA, it doesn't live in your cell. It's very temporary. It's not very stable. And so the storage conditions of these vaccines, they need to be frozen and for some amount of time. The Pfizer vaccine, it needs to stay frozen and then thawed for use. Adenovirus vaccines. So these are called adenovirus vector vaccines, which basically by vector, it means that the spike, the sequence of the spike protein is inside of the adenovirus. The adenovirus is a virus that can cause the common cold. However, both the J&J is one adenovirus 26, and the AstraZeneca Oxford vaccine, this is a chimpanzee adenovirus. So it's not something that we would commonly come into contact with. The adenoviruses that they've made no longer can replicate. So they cannot replicate in your body. They will not cause you to get a cold or get sick. But what they do is they give your cells the sequence of the spike protein that your cells will make and educate your immune system with. In this case, the danger signal is the adenovirus vector itself. It tells your immune system, hey, you get revved up, and then the sequence of the spike protein is like, this is what you need to target.
So in these two cases, can I interrupt you with a follow-up question there? Yeah, so in these two cases, they're using basically a genetically modified version of another virus. And it's also not a virus that can infect us. Is that right?
They've made that virus non-replicating so that they will not, but non-replicating means it cannot make copies of itself.
It cannot make copies of itself, right? Okay, thank you.
And then the recombinant vaccines, these are protein subunits. So the actual protein of the spike protein in combination with an adjuvant, which is a dangerous signal. An adjuvant, in this case, for both the Novavax vaccine and the GSK Sanofi vaccine, is a chemical adjuvant. So it's like little chemicals that kind of stimulate your body. So this, again, is the danger signal, and then this is what you need to target, which is the spike protein. And we know that immune responses against the spike protein prevents the SARS-CoV-2 from infecting your cells. So this is what causes it to not attack your body and to be efficacious in terms of a vaccine. The more antibodies, which is a part of the immune response that you have that stop the SARS-CoV-2 from entering your cells, the more effective a vaccine that you have. So, some other things that are different between these three vaccines is, I talked about storage, speed. So the mRNA vaccines came out first because it's faster to manufacture. There is some differences in manufacturing between an mRNA vaccine and adenovirus vaccine and the protein vaccines, which the protein vaccines, manufacturing in general, pharmaceutical manufacturing is very highly regulated, very challenging. I have a lot of respect for those that work in pharmaceutical manufacturing. And it does take time, which is where we are now. It's almost unprecedented how quickly we have the number of doses that we have, although we need a lot more.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, I know. I was reflecting on how I can't believe we have any vaccines at barely a year out from having the RNA of this virus sequenced. It's really remarkable.
Right. And I'll add that, although the mRNA vaccines and the adenovirus vaccines, these are newer technologies that haven't been approved previously, but they've been highly studied in terms of clinical trials for cancer or for other infectious diseases. Recombinant vaccines, these have been approved previously. One example is the hepatitis B vaccine. That's kind of an overview. Honestly, the more vaccines that work, the better situation we are, because not only do we need to vaccinate, the United States, for example, we kind of need to vaccinate the world.
Right.
Yeah.
Yeah, so we're going to drop a link to a very detailed roundup of all the vaccines that are in development. It's in Nature, so it's a little on the academic side, but it does cover them all. I have a follow-up question for you. So the only two vaccines that are on the market or that are available, they're approved for emergency use authorization from the FDA, are both mRNA vaccines, and they're quite similar in terms of their ingredients. And we got a question about those ingredients from Gail from Pennsylvania, who wants to know, does the mRNA vaccine contain any blood fractions or plasma?
The answer to that is no.
Yeah.
The mRNA is synthetic, and it's encapsulated by these lipid bubbles. So there's no blood fractions or plasma. There's no human products needed, as it's fully synthetic.
Yeah, they're the way I think of it, and you can correct me if I'm wrong, is these are almost like printed in a lab. I mean, there's really no human biological component at all.
Right. And that's where manufacturing is different for the adenovirus and recombinant proteins. You actually need like cells to make adenovirus and recombinant proteins. So cells in the lab that, just grow indefinitely, but it requires additional steps in its process.
Right. And what kind of cells those are varies by vaccine. And I'm sure as more of these reach approval, we'll be talking more about, how these are made and so forth. So I also just want to shout out to one of our readers, Jennifer W., who yesterday we posted an update about the J&J vaccine phase 3 trial results. And Jennifer had a terrific explanation of this same question last night on a thread. So just shout out to her. I love our readers.
So I have a question for you. So from Barb from Pennsylvania and from Oregon, maybe?
She said Pennsylvania and Oregon.
Pennsylvania and Oregon, from both. Since new strains of the virus are more easily transmitted, I heard that we should either buy KF94 masks or wear 2 masks at a time. Is it true? Is one better than the other?
Yeah, we got a ton of mask questions again this week. And I had a flashback to the summer where I felt like we were actually just running a mask promotion page, and we tackled almost nothing but mask questions. So the reason we're talking about masks again is because we have these new variants of the virus, and they appear to be better at infecting people. And as I start to talk about this, I want to note that the fact that we have new variants that have higher infectivity does not mean that SARS-CoV has gotten a Twitter account, right? The particles are the same size as ever. The basic mechanics of how infection happens are the same. But we need to double down on the strategies that we use to protect ourselves, because for reasons that are not yet fully understood, it does seem like these new variants are more effective at, they're more contagious. They're easier to catch, right? So if you've seen the Swiss cheese model of public health, of infection control, we're going to drop a link to it. It's this idea that we have lots of different layers of protection. All of them are weak. All of them have holes in them, right? But when we stack them all together, those holes will not line up with one another, and we will have better protection. So Kai Cooper-Schmidt, who is a science writer and biologist, once on Twitter last week was saying that these new variants basically mean that we can afford fewer, smaller holes in our cheese, right? So we need to tighten up the holes in our cheese. And to answer Barb's question directly, yes, it is time to up our mask game. And what's recommended is either wearing 2 masks or an N95 or KF94 mask. And I'm going to get into some details here and then circle back to big picture. I think it's really easy for people to like go down a mask rabbit hole and ask. Every time we answer mask questions, there's a million more mask questions that come up. And so it is important to keep your eye on the big picture here. So first of all, I have props for this. N95 respirators or KF94 masks are they're basically equivalent to each other. Here's one of each. This one is a KF94. It's K is for Korean, F is for filter. It's a filter fabric that will filter small particles, quite similar to an N95 respirator mask. KF94 masks are cheaper and easier to find. Where I am, they're readily available at the drugstore or Costco. One of the other nice things about these is that they come in a children's size, and N94 masks do not. I find them very comfortable. Some people hate them. And so, if you can get one and try it on and it works for you, these are probably the best readily available masks that are available for wearing one mask and having it be effective. Now, second best would be a surgical mask. This is a surgical mask. Surgical masks are made of usually 3 layers of special material. They're disposable. They have ear loops. They have a little bendy thing in the nose that helps you get a really good fit. They're very comfortable to wear, and they are very effective. So that's second best. Third best would be a cloth mask that has 2 or 3 layers, and that would include if there's some kind of filter inside, right? This is my favorite kind of cloth mask. It's called an origami fold. I really like it because it fits well over my nose, and it's comfortable to wear. Mine has a little bendy thing in the nose that helps it stay close under my glasses. So it's a nice tight fit the whole way around under my chin, and it doesn't ride up into my eyeballs. So that's your third best. Now, this new recommendation is emerging to wear 2. Okay, so if you can get a KF94 or an N95, and it fits well, that's fine. That's good enough, right? If you're going to go with a surgical mask or cloth mask, or maybe a less well-fitting cloth mask like this one. This is like sort of a stretchy material. It doesn't fit as well over my nose. 2 masks, choosing any 2 of these would be better than 1, right? And the main reason for that is it will fit tighter on your face. The fit will be better when you layer them. The particles that we're exhaling have not gotten any smaller. It's just that we need to sort of double down on the fit. Okay, we're gonna drop a link to this Popular Mechanics article that covers all of the mask types and the concept of wearing 2 masks. It's a really good roundup. So those are sort of the general notes. I wanted to say thanks to one of our viewers from last week, Jack from Beaver Dam, Wisconsin, noticed that I accidentally said KN94. It's KF94 or N95. And these 2 types of masks are, as I said, quite equivalent. N95s are hard to find, and I find them uncomfortable. They do fit really well. So if you have those, that's great. If it fits well, that's great. If you can't find them, I would suggest that KF94s. Okay, so big picture, what's the best mask of all? The best mask is the one that's on your face. Okay, you should wear a mask that fits you all the way around and is comfortable enough that you're just going to wear it without a lot of fussing around, without wanting to take it off. I personally find the KF94 masks fit me very well. They're very comfortable. My husband hates them. They ride up into his eyeballs. He can't wear them. Okay, so both of us really like these origami fold fabric masks, but I had to make his like extra large to fit fit well over his ears and around the sides. So you really just want to focus on a mask that fits you well and wear it consistently in all situations where you're near other people outside your household. Okay, outside, inside, wherever you are.
How do you wear 2 masks? Like, how do you get that to?
So what I have seen, so we've seen some images of Dr. Fauci who's been wearing, and what I have seen is the surgical mask underneath. And then sort of as another layer on top of that, here's another fabric mask that I have that doesn't have an especially good fit. So put the fabric mask on top of that. Okay, now this feels like a lot of layers to me. And so I personally would prefer the KF94 mask because it's more comfortable and I get a good fit from that. The idea is not that we need like so many more layers that you can barely breathe. It's really just that we need it to fit quite snugly all the way around, right? So this one, for example, I don't know if you can see, this one has a very good fit over my nose. My glasses don't fog because there is no air coming up through here, and it goes the whole way snugly around the sides of my face. I also like how it moves when I talk. And I could put another mask right on top of this one for, just to keep it on even better. So there's not a specific recommendation about the order that we should wear them in. It's basically, you should wear either a respirator mask that fits you well, or any 2 of these other masks together. That's the current advice.
Right. I mean, I may add, if you are wearing a surgical mask or a medical grade mask, that you wear that first and then put the cloth mask on top, because the cloth mask you can wash, and that'll keep the medical grade mask so that you can continue using it. And then also it gives that medical grade mask closest to your face, so it gives better filtration.
Yeah, I would agree with that. So if one of your masks is a surgical mask,
Mhm.
put that one on first, put the cloth mask on top of that. As you said, it's sort of like that outer protective layer and then the inner filtration layer.
Great.
Okay, I'm sure this is just going to generate 1,000 more mask questions. That's what happens every time we tackle masks. Okay, so I just want to remind our viewers that we don't take questions cold out of the comment box here on our live. We like to research the answers in advance. I have to go get all of my props, for example. So if you have a question, go to our website at dearpandemic.org. Search for your question there. It's very easy to search our website. We may have already answered it. And if we haven't, then put it in our question box, which is also right on the landing page. So I have the next question for you, Michelle. Pammy from Dallas would like to know, if Moderna has a COVID vaccine that works, why isn't the makeup of that vaccine shared with other vaccine manufacturers so that it can be produced in mass quantities? Why would a company like Johnson & Johnson wait to produce their own vaccine when there is already a vaccine formula that works?
I think that's a great question. Thanks. Thank you, Pammy. And first of all, there is a need for multiple vaccines. Within development, not every vaccine will make it across the finish line. So that's the first thing. The second thing is that there are some differences between the vaccines. So for instance, J&J vaccine they just recently tested 1 dose, although they are also testing 2 doses. And the storage conditions of the J&J vaccine is a little bit more stable than the Moderna or the Pfizer vaccine. So that would make it a great vaccine. For example, I know for J&J is planning on producing a lot of vaccines for third world countries, because it's easier from the storage condition and from the 1 dose to vaccinate large amounts of people over time. So there is a need for different vaccines. We need to vaccinate the whole world so that we stop having these different variants pop up. It's not just about one country. That said, so recently, Sanofi has jumped in and said they will manufacture the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine. So what's happened is the Sanofi GSK vaccine is delayed during their phase 1-2 trials. They found that the vaccine didn't work as well in patients over 50 years old. Therefore, they reformulated that vaccine so that it would work better in older patients. I know we had a question also in the question box about, well, what about older people? Like, do they need a specific vaccine? And the answer is no. We're within all the clinical trials, they are looking very closely on how vaccines work in older patients versus younger patients to make sure it's relatively equivalent in line. But
and that's super important in this vaccine in particular, because the burden of disease is so much higher in older people.
Absolutely. So that caused a delay in when the Sanofi GSK vaccine will be available, because they have to go back to phase 2 trials with the reformulated vaccine. So because of this, maybe because of this gap, Sanofi had agreed to manufacture 125 million doses of the Pfizer BioNTech vaccine in the meantime. And so this is actually very big and directly addresses your question, in that this is an example of a vaccine manufacturer whose own vaccine was delayed and has stepped in to manufacture a different company's vaccine in the meantime.
Yeah, and one of the important points there is there are really 2 parts of the vaccine process, right? There's the development part, and then there's the manufacturing part. So once we have developed a vaccine and tested it in a small number of people, then we go to the manufacturing plant and start making lots and lots of doses. And so Sanofi has agreed to use their manufacturing capacity while they're going back to their own development process for their own vaccine.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said before, we're in a unique time when we've manufactured a lot of vaccine prior to development being finished. at risk. So we've been fortunate that the Moderna vaccine, the Pfizer vaccine, and very likely the J&J vaccine has moved forward because we've already manufactured
Yeah,
a lot of it prior to.
So they started making doses in that they started that manufacturing process even before they knew whether it would work. And when you say at risk, that means if it hadn't worked, they would have had to just trash it.
They would have to toss it all out.
Yeah.
Right. And that was part of the, Operation Warp Speed and
Right.
funding to be able to do that at risk.
Yeah. Okay, so you have the last question for me.
And this is a good one because I don't know the answer, but I hope you do. That's why we don't take questions cold. So the question's from Mary Lou in New Jersey. And she asked that my 91-year-old father recalls having reactions to shots in the Army in the 50s. State New Jersey guidelines warn about taking the vaccine if you had previous reactions. So,
yeah, so I've got a couple things I want to say about this. First of all, I want to just highlight how far our vaccine tech has come since the 50s. We are considerably better at optimizing vaccines to minimize side effects, or what's called reactogenicity in science terminology, and optimize the immune system response and the protection that we get from vaccines. So in general, I would say that vaccines today are much less likely to cause reactions than whatever vaccine he remembers getting in the 50s. More specifically, I want to talk about the reactions we're hearing about to the mRNA vaccines from Pfizer and Moderna, which are the only two that are currently available to anyone. I think in general, these reactions have been communicated a little bit badly. We're not talking about typical reactions to a vaccine like sore arm or body aches when we talk about recommending against getting them. We're really talking about having a severe allergic reaction to an injectable drug, specifically anaphylaxis or face swelling and throat closing up. These allergic reactions would be, I mean, you would know it if you had it. You would have had to have an epinephrine injection, and it's a medical emergency. So it's not just like your typical body aches, a little headache or fatigue after a vaccine. It's really an immediate anaphylactic reaction. So I'll say, if you have had a reaction like that, an anaphylactic reaction to a vaccine or any injectable drug, or actually any medical concerns that are specific to your situation, you should talk to your clinician about getting this vaccine, and they'll help you make a decision. I am not a clinician, and I'm not anybody's clinician, and certainly not Mary Lou's dad's clinician. So I'll tell you what the CDC says, though. The CDC says that this vaccine is recommended for people who have a history of, and this is a quote, history of severe allergic reactions not related to vaccines or injectable medication. And so it's recommended for people who have food allergies, including severe, who have pet allergies, allergies to venom, environmental allergies, or latex. For people with a history of allergies to oral medications or a family history of severe allergic reactions may also get vaccinated. So most of the even severe allergic reactions are not really a concern here. People who have had a severe allergic reaction to their first dose of these vaccines should talk to their doctor before they get another dose. And if you have some kind of a severe allergy, just tell the folks at your vaccine site, make sure that they know, and they will want to monitor you for 30 minutes following your vaccination. We're going to drop the link to the CDC guidelines on allergic reactions to the vaccine. And then the last thing I want to talk about is I just want to touch on how frequent these side effects really are, as well as these severe allergic reactions, because we've had some updates. There are millions of people who've got them. Many of them are in these trials. And we are getting a ton of questions about these. So a couple days ago, our buddy over at your local epidemiologist, Dr. Caitlin Jedalina, posted the cliff notes of the recent ACIP meeting at CDC, and it's super helpful. So I'm going to direct people to reading that. All kinds of interesting stuff came up at that meeting, like vaccines for kids, side effects, whether vaccines prevent transmission. It's actually a very interesting read. among the topics that were covered at that meeting was an update on the rate of these severe allergic reactions, anaphylactic reactions to the vaccine. And we've had in the US 71 reported anaphylactic reactions among almost 20 million doses. So they are quite rare. Most of the people who had, almost all of the people who had a severe allergic reaction, it happened within 30 minutes of receiving the vaccine. And so that's why this recommendation is to be observed for 30 minutes if you have a history of a very severe allergy. I'll also update you on some rates on some of those more normal reactions. Over 70% of people did have some pain at the injection site after their either their first or their second dose of vaccine. And almost half of people did have fatigue, headache, myalgia, especially following their second dose. So that's, you know, more than half of people had some side effects. Now, actually, more than half of people did not have those side effects, right? So if you have gotten the vaccine and you have had no side effects, that does not mean it didn't work, right? It just means you were in the lucky half that didn't have any reactions. And then the other thing that came up is that we're hearing anecdotally that people who have had previous COVID infection have more severe side effects, these typical, you know, headache, fatigue, fever, that kind of thing. And there are some studies that are investigating what's going on with that. It is being reported anecdotally, but there's no indication that there's a safety issue with that. So the vaccine is definitely still recommended if you have had COVID-19 already. All right, so that is all we have time for today. We get a ton of questions and we cannot get to them all, but I do want to let you know we read them all and we use them to schedule what we're going to post about for the next week at Dear Pandemic, also what we're going to talk about next week on the Facebook Live. Let's see. Oh, and I also have to highlight, we have so many questions in the question box about things we've already answered, like wearing a mask after getting vaccinated, getting together with a group of people who've all been vaccinated, taking ibuprofen before or after you get the vaccine. Go check our website because all those answers are waiting for you at dearpandemic.org. So if you have a question, put it there. And meanwhile, thanks for joining us. We will be back at the same time next week, Saturday at 9:30 a.m. Central Time. I actually have the week off. It's going to be a couple of our other Nerdy Girl partners. And until then, stay safe and stay sane.